I am extremely excited today to have this broadcast with a very good friend of mine. We're very lucky I'm lucky to have her on the show. So this is Danielle Klein, and she was until recently the global sales director for the Hearst magazine group. But I'm making a really poor job of introducing you, so I'll let you welcome Danielle. Let you introduce yourself and tell us what is your current involvement in the fashion industry?
Okay. Hi. Thank you, Desi. Thank you for having me on your show. Very excited to be here. So I have spent 25 years in the media sales industry, which seems like an awfully long time. I was first in newspapers and then in outdoor media. And then lately I have been at Hearst Magazines, which is the publisher of Elle and Harpers Bazaar, Esquire, Cosmopolitan, and Good Housekeeping, to name but a few. So I have primarily been in international fashion sales for most of my career. When I moved from South Africa to the UK, I got a job in what's now a defunct company called NKJ. And they had a partnership with British Airways to distribute shopping magazines for the Japanese market. And they interviewed me and said, "Do you know anything about fashion?" I said, "Yeah, I know everything about fashion." Yeah, so much. Knew nothing. I was in my Marks and Spencer suit and my little court heels. And I got the job, and they sent me off to Milan and New York and Paris and wherever to go and meet directly with all the fashion clients to go and generate advertising revenue into these little booklets. So I was extremely lucky and very fortunate because 20 years ago, I was building relationships directly with the likes of Louis Vuitton and Gucci and Dior, and then later on with Michael Kors and Topshop and all the big brands. And that's kind of how my career went until I kind of moved more into the management roles, where I kind of was starting to manage global sales teams that didn't just do fashion advertising.
So what are you currently doing?
So I did the amazing thing of leaving Hearst at the end of last year, thinking, this would be a good step for my career because I was kind of looking for new opportunities. And popped off traveling for a couple of months, as you know, and came back to London at the beginning of February, where I started to look at what was available in the market, particularly in the digital world. And then Corona hit. So now I'm doing consulting, and I'm also working on an e-commerce project with some potential partners. So it's really exciting, and it's keeping me busy while I remain in lockdown in my tiny flat in London.
Yes. So when you were a global sales director, what exactly does that mean? Because I think we all know what a sales director does, and most people kind of have probably the wrong impression of a sales director. But what does it mean within the fashion industry, and specifically within, a magazine publishing group like the Hearst with all the wonderful fashion titles? What is something like that?
No, I get it. The single objective of any magazine, or whether it be online or offline, or in fact any publication, is to generate money. And the best way to generate money is through advertising revenue. And magazines like Harpers Bazaar and Elle have historically long relationships with fashion brands. In fact, all blue chip brands who will advertise with them. As a global sales director, in my career, it's meant different things. When I was working in primarily UK-based businesses, like particularly in the outdoor industry, my job was to go abroad and work with clients who wanted to advertise in UK publications, hence why it was called global. At Hearst, it's one of the largest publishers in the world. They have more than 300 media brands in 80 markets, both online and offline, events. They have a myriad of different platforms, and there are a lot of partners, as we call advertisers, out there who want to be able to advertise in multiple markets. So the likes of Burberry or Samsung or Hyundai or whoever may want to advertise in Harper's Bazaar in 10 markets around the world. So that was my responsibility, was to run the sales team that generated advertising in multiple markets.
Wow, sounds complicated.
Not really. It's pretty straightforward because you just get to go and build relationships with great clients and find out as much as you can about their business and work out what the solution is to be able to hit their kind of objectives.
So do they have objectives then when they decide to advertise? I imagine they probably buy a few publications, or can they just buy one-off advertising? And what are their objectives?
So there are two objectives for advertisers in terms of running an advertising campaign. And although they overlap, the one is to drive brand awareness. What's your brand position? What's your brand story? What's your brand imagery? And the second is to drive sales. How do you convert your audience from visiting or seeing an ad in a newspaper or magazine or seeing it online and creating enough engagement so that it leads to an action where they want to go and buy that product?
Okay, that's interesting, because at the smaller level, when fashion brands, if they do manage to get the money to advertise, it's very much about, we want to be in such and such magazine because it's prestigious, etc. But most of us, most small brands owners don't necessarily think beyond that. They just want to be there so that they can put it on social media and hope for the best. So are you saying that on the higher level, there's like a lot more strategy involved and number crunching? And
there's a huge amount of strategy. All the top 100 or 500 brands out there will have media agencies, social media agencies, influencer agencies, branding agencies, design agencies. There are so many different elements to pulling together a marketing strategy, from point of sale to consumer journey, to the advertising and brand awareness campaign, to the social media campaign that's going to drive conversions. It's really it's not complicated, but it's very sophisticated.
mm-hmm.
I would suggest that for small brands, such as the ones that might be listening to us today, is to stop worrying about where, building a relationship with Harpers Bazaar or Vogue or Hypebeast is obviously very important. But the best way to do that is through getting editorial buy-in of your product. Your most important thing is to understand really clearly what is the main message, what is your identity, what are the values that your brand stands for, how is your brand differentiating itself from its competitors, what is the hook that's going to make your brand stand out in what is probably a very saturated marketplace, and then build storytelling and narratives and content around that brand messaging. And it can be right through the whole user journey. So it's not only just the direct advertising and content marketing that you might do on social media, or the imagery that you use, or the video-based units that you might use in standard banner, what we call display advertising. But needs to be investment in the photography, the video. Are you going to create something that's really quirky and humorous and fun, that's going to appeal more to a Gen Z, millennial audience? Are you going for more of a kind of serious luxury statement piece? How are you going to do that through imagery? If you look at all the big premium luxury brands, Vuitton, Richemont, Prada, Gucci, they've really pivoted so well from the old days where Gucci was all about the latest Mario Testino, stunning visuals that were going to be created. Maybe I shouldn't say Mario Testino now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That were beautiful imagery where it was built into the magazines. Now they're pivoting towards creating amazing storytelling on video. You look at the Prada campaigns where they actually create an entire 3 or 5 minute story. Another great way to drive brand awareness is through the use of influencers. We talk a lot about influencers that are dead, but they're really not. If you can directly identify what specific category and audience is your product going to appeal to, and then identify either yourself through a lot of research or through a social influencer agency, which influencers specifically appeal or have high followers amongst the audience that you want to reach, then that's a really great way to go, because basically they're doing your marketing for them and for you, and it's not too salesy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of new platforms out now that are building data based on the way that people engage with an influencer. So, for example, they can tell that a person that is likely to wear Adidas trainers is just as likely to want to do a million, other things that form part of their lifestyle. And they're using that data to build audiences and to identify influencers that brands can connect with.
Wow.
Another big part of branding, brand awareness, especially in the e-commerce age, is packaging.
Mm-hmm.
The whole of experience of getting that package, opening it, the paper that's used, the messaging, perhaps a little thank you card, is a really good hook. And it definitely enhances that kind of path from purchase to usage. And hopefully in an e-commerce business where there's frequency of product consumption, there's an opportunity there to build brand awareness and build tone of voice and etc. And then of course you come to Instagram, which is fantastic because we all know that a picture or a video is worth 1,000 words, and you can use Instagram with the use of hashtags to build a community around your product. You can get your customers to share photos of products that they may have bought from you. So there's so many different ways that you can create brand awareness in using online marketing.
So it sounds like when you commit money to advertising and you advertise, it's really just a small part of a much bigger strategy. And you need to pull all these different levers to make it all work and culminate in sales and exposure, right?
Yeah, I agree. Jessie, it's really easy to, well, not easy, but you come up with this amazing idea and you think, oh my God, I'm the only person in the world who has come up with this fabulous idea. It could be a new bag, it could be whatever new product that you've decided to launch into the market. But my advice would be that however much money you spend on formulating, creating, and launching your product, you spend exactly the same amount on marketing it and customer acquisition.
Wow.
Yeah, because it sounds to me like a lot of your brands are obviously quite small, and they get focused on the minutiae of the product, which is great because they're looking to create something that's new and unique and fabulous in the market. But the marketing of it, particularly in e-commerce, the customer acquisition strategy is just as important as the product itself.
Yeah. Well, actually, what's really interesting is that people tend to put more money into the photo shoots, into advertising, marketing, etc., and they skimp or try to negotiate down on making the product. And that's where there's a lot of problems in terms of manufacturing, for example. So it's interesting what you're saying because, well, basically from both sides, from your side and from my side, it sounds like you really need to think through your budget and have an equal amount of importance to your budget and how you spend it.
Absolutely. And remember, what I've just talked about is the brand awareness side of advertising. The second, equally important, if not more important part of advertising is driving sales. What is the job required of customer acquisition? Basically acquiring your customers through messaging that drives an action, which leads to a conversion. So, for example, that's the most important thing because whatever you're doing is great and you can have beautiful photography and everything else. But if you're not creating a process that's going to allow your product to be found online and to be sold online, then what's the point of doing it? So the most important thing there's two critical things in terms of driving sales, and that is SEO and social media. So SEO, which as you'll know is search engine optimization, is basically the method that works probably the best because what you're doing is SEO is keyword ranking. So what you're doing is targeting your customers who are arriving at your website by way of a keyword search that they initiated. So for example, if you are looking to, if you're selling, I don't know, black leather handbags, or bridal dresses. Your customer is going to potentially find you through a marketing campaign that you may have done in print or in display banner sites. But imagine if they find you because they found you through their own action. So what they might have typed in is top 10 handbags for spring 2020, or environmentally friendly bridal dresses. Your job is to make sure that whatever search they put in that's related to keywords that your product represents, that they will find you on the first page of Google search. Because if you're not on the first page, then there's no point in it. So that's the key thing, is you've got to give yourself the best opportunity of being ranked on Google, which means that you need to do an SEO campaign where you're optimizing keywords to reach your potential consumers.
Yeah, I think the SEO is a whole can of worms. It's a massive subject. And it's part, like you said, it's part of the bigger picture of advertising. But going back to advertising, for me, advertising is very intangible, at least on smaller level of fashion brands. Advertising, a bit like PR, is not something with tangible results. If you're lucky, you get results. If you're not, but literally we look at it as, at the level of luck. And I don't think that the big brands look at it that way. I think you guys, you have proper targets. So how do you calculate the return on investment?
So return on investment is really important. We put in on every advertising campaign a set of measurable metrics, and we call these KPIs. Mm-hmm. On a brand campaign, which is normally now video content, where there might be a co-branded piece of content that's being produced by the magazine on behalf of a client, the metrics are predominantly video views. How many people viewed my campaign? But magazines can't just rely on organic reach.
Yeah.
What they're doing all the time in order to make sure they reach that metric, let's say it's 1 million video views or 500,000 video views, is they're boosting it through paid for Facebook advertising.
And that's part of the advertising budget that the client will give.
25 to 30% of any advertising budget that we receive, let's say it's $500,000, will be put towards social media optimization, because you can't just rely on your own reach. It's just huge. You're dealing in a market where there are literally millions of pieces of content related that are similar to the ones that you might be producing. So that's absolutely critical. And then when it comes to KPIs that are associated with conversions, then you're looking at engagement, click through to purchase, etc. So it's really straightforward, and we are measured on that. It's really important that if you're building an advertising campaign and you're working with a media agency, that you clearly define what your metrics are and what objectives you expect to be achieved on that campaign. Because if the objectives aren't achieved, then the campaign's a failure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So did you just say that when big clients do advertising campaign with magazines like the ones you were representing, that the magazines go and execute the content, the video content? It's not actually the brand who goes and does it and says, here's my video, really?
No. So there's a difference between paid for content marketing and paid for display. Display, like the ad that you'll see in a magazine or the banner that you see at the top of Harpers Bazaar, is a piece of content, a piece of advertising that's been created by the brand. And it's very straightforward, but doesn't have the highest engagement rate. What is the number one benefit of advertising in a magazine is, in turn, to what the brand is benefiting from is the trust and loyalty that's been built. I mean, in the case of Harpers Bazaar, over 150 years, between the magazine, whether it's online or offline, and the consumer. You're talking about magazines that your great-grandmother, your grandmother, your mother, your sisters have been reading for umpteen decades. I mean, look at Good Housekeeping. So So when I was working at Hearst, when we were creating content, we have the editorial studio who are creating the organic editorial, but we have a separate content studio made up of editors whose job it is to work with our clients to build content that sits within the magazine. And the reason why we do that is because the content that is co-branded, in other words, it's branded by the magazine on one side and the client on the other, needs to feel authentic and look like it's part of the general material that's produced by the magazine. And nobody can do that except the magazine team itself.
Wow. Okay. So if a smaller emerging brand wanted to advertise in Harpers, for example, or something, what would you advise them? Would you advise them to go and go for a placement inside the physical magazine, or should they go online, or try to split their budget between the two? What kind of strategy would you advise someone?
It really depends, Desi. I mean, if you're a very small brand, you're probably likely to be predominantly e-commerce. Am I right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so if you're an e-commerce brand and you're small, I would be looking for two things probably. First, I'd be looking at online content. So looking at where you can create advertising in partnership with Harpers Bazaar, either through their display formats, like their banner ads, or through a content campaign like the likes of which I've been describing. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is to start making sure that your product is being reviewed by all the fashion or beauty or lifestyle editors on as many different online publications as you can find.
But that's PR. We're talking PR now.
Well, I wouldn't be talking. I mean, I call it marketing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I call it marketing because when you're looking for a new mattress or a new set of mugs or a new, I don't know, wallet.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at my desk and looking at what's on my desk. Where do you go to look for a new mattress? What's the first thing that you do? You go and what do you say? Top mattresses available in London.
Yeah. So
the review sites have become the trusted source of our shopping decisions. Hearst has actually published and created an online magazine called Best Reviews in America. Hugely successful and popular. And what they do is they just publish reviews, listicles of top 10 this, top 10 that, best way to work from home, what's the best monitors to work from home with. You know, there's 1,001 different ways. And that's a big source of revenue for magazines now because they generate affiliate revenue.
So interesting you mentioned affiliate revenue. So the publishing industry has changed a lot since when you first started, right? And we already saw the shift from offline to online, and they've been struggling, trying to, keep the offline alive. How have they managed to survive? What are the sources of revenue if magazines have declined and continue declining?
Well, they're not declining.
Aren't they?
Print magazines are seeing circulation declines, absolutely.
Yeah.
Publishing companies are very flexible and very quick to react and evolve their businesses. They're just amazing. Mm-hmm. I've been very fortunate working at Hearst and working for such an amazing company that's been so quick and sure-footed at how they've evolved their business. So traditionally, there were two big sources of revenue for a magazine publisher. The one was circulation sales, so the money that you generated from people buying your magazine, which is still a very big source of revenue for any publishing company, whether you're the Financial Times, the Washington Post, or Cosmopolitan. Mm-hmm. And the second is, of course, advertising revenue. But now, as they've pivoted outside of print publishing, there are different ways that they generate money. Standard display banner advertising, branded content where they're building creative content partnerships with advertisers. Events is a huge source of revenue. Think of Vogue with the Met Ball. Think of Financial Times. Think of Harpers Bazaar with their Women of the Year. Didn't you go to the Elle Weekender event last year with the kids where they ran it at the Saatchi Gallery? Because you're getting your most loyal consumers, readers, who love your magazine and want to be more engaged and involved with your magazine. It's a natural fit because they're coming to, and they're going to spend money to come and visit your event. Mm-hmm. Plus, advertisers are going to pay money to sponsor that event. So it's like a It's wonderful.
And they also sell online products now, or getting perhaps a percentage of sales or something, right?
Absolutely. So commercial revenue is a big move, and it's a big. It's beginning to grow. It's been quite small. It started quite small, but basically, what we realized is that people come to Good Housekeeping or Bazaar or Elle are being objective in your in the reviews that you do, and you continue to do so. There's no reason why you can't also generate revenue from people who click through to purchase a product that you've been talking about on your online magazine. So if you talk about the top 10 lipsticks or top 10 whatever, then it's natural, and you know, L'Oreal, Dior, Gucci, Thomas Ford, you know, Tom Ford, whatever it might be, it's natural to, if you're going to click through to buy that product, that the magazine generates a percentage of that. And there are platforms that are set up to measure and identify how much revenue. So in the USA, for example, Best Reviews is generating millions of dollars of revenue through affiliate revenue. So you look at now TikTok, okay? One of the biggest trends on TikTok is 5 things you must buy from Amazon. 5 things TikTok made me buy on Amazon. Yeah?
Right. Yeah.
But that's all affiliate revenue. So what's happening is they're linking the products through on their profile page to make it easier for people to go and buy the lipstick or the eyebrow pencil or the, what's the new thing, the iced jade roller that everyone's doing on their faces. And as soon as you click through to Amazon to buy that product, you get a percentage of the money that that consumer paid.
Huh.
I know, it's amazing. And then, of course, you've got licensing, because now you've got a brand that's very high profile and has a huge reputation and trust in the market. You know, so while I was at Hearst, one of the big, there were 2 big licensing. One was with a car, the Cosmo, was it Skoda, or I can't remember, Fiat maybe. And then the other one was Men's Health, licensing a range of vitamins that were sold through Boots. So there's like a million ways that publishers are positively moving forward to generate advertising revenue outside of traditional advertising channels.
So that's really interesting, because I often talk, and when I work with brands and clients, I often tell them how your brand is just a vehicle, but you can't just rely on it for money. You have to actually have different streams of revenue. And it seems like the publishing industry, it's a perfect example of how they have evolved their model. So they're not just relying, I mean, everyone would just assume that they're relying on sales from their online magazine and sales of the offline magazine, right? But you're saying that there's like,
it's huge.
How many?
They're huge, and they're constantly evolving and changing. You know, there's so much talent that works for these publishing companies, and they're all very creative. So why wouldn't they be constantly thinking about how to move forward and evolve their business? And they're reacting in response to what their audience wants. You know, we know that print magazines have an aging audience. And eventually, you know, I don't think the big print magazines will ever close. You know, you look at Good Housekeeping and Bazaar and Vogue. I can't see it, because it's still a very special experience opening that magazine and reading it, or getting your Sunday newspaper. But you know, publishers are brilliant at doing that.
So it seems like there's a lot of lessons that can be transferred to a smaller brand. So there's no reason, if you're smaller, to not adopt some of that kind of thinking, but scale it down, right?
Absolutely. And just be aware that, if I can give one lesson, and that make sure that your product launch, that your marketing campaign is as important as the kind of, you know, theatrics and visuals and imagery that you are choosing to use for your product.
Yeah, amazing. So what do you see the future of publishing and magazines would be now? What's your little crystal ball saying?
I was thinking about this because I knew you'd ask me this question. You know, pre-COVID, pre and post-COVID, I mean, the biggest challenge was obviously the decline in print, and offsetting that with digital and event growth. The biggest challenge in publishing up until now has been probably the duopoly of Facebook and Google. Because if you consider that the UK advertising market is worth, I think it was like 25 billion pounds, over half of that money is now spent on digital. And of that 12 billion pounds spent on digital, 70% of that is spent with two companies, Google and Facebook. And I include Instagram in that because obviously Facebook, Instagram. So now you already, before COVID, were in a situation where every other publisher was competing for 30% of the digital advertising part. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's pretty difficult. Post-COVID, am I ever going to be able to wear a pair of high-heeled shoes on again? I don't know. It's going to be difficult. I think working from home is now going to be pretty normal. When I was at Hearst last year, we were beginning to play with it. People were allowed to work from home once a fortnight or once a week, but it wasn't really a big thing. Now it's just, I can't see it ever going back to normal. And I think that's kind of quite sad, because in advertising and editorial, it's all about creativity and relationships. And I think that we're going to lose that. The other big impact from a personal point of view is that the government's obviously been subsidizing businesses with the furloughing scheme. Mm. And it's amazing to hear that that's been extended until October. But once we start to get back to some kind of new normal, I foresee that there's going to be some brutal restructuring in most publishing businesses while they try to accommodate what their business is going to look like in 2021. I also think that the ad market is obviously operating in a very uncertain environment, because we know that marketing budgets are going to be cut drastically. Yeah. Fashion brands, there's no fashion shows, there's no shoots, there's none of that being created. I think that brands are going to move from traditional advertising or content-led advertising, and this is only my opinion, to focus on hard metrics that rapidly build conversions and click through to purchase. But I also think that just as there are these challenges, that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for publishers, because they're creating vital and informative content that's trusted by their readers. Mm-hmm. So there is a great deal of empathy and transparency in the content that they're creating, and people are going to feel more closer to their favorite media brand. I think there's opportunities for brands to re-message, but the big thing is obviously e-commerce. Every brand is obviously thinking about how to primarily get to market through online sales.
So are you saying that in that case, that if advertising revenues decline, they would obviously naturally be looking for new sources of revenue, and they might ramp up their own e-commerce sections, let's say, and start competing with the e-tailers?
I don't know for sure, because I'm not directly in the market right now.
It would make sense, right?
It would make sense for publishers to be fast-tracking their e-commerce capabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if there's less spending power and there's economic downturn, competing with other established shops, while it makes sense, also it's more competitive.
I don't think that they'll ever become retailers. Well, I can't see it. There might be licensing, the Good Housekeeping range of cookware. But I can't see them actually producing and manufacturing products for retail. But I do.
No, I didn't mean manufacturing. I meant more like becoming an aggregate, of other brands, a bit like maybe Farfetch, something like this.
Yeah, possibly. But I think they're probably more on the affiliate revenue side.
Yeah.
That one probably makes more sense. They're probably just going to look to fast track that.
Interesting. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was really insightful. Any last word of advice? Someone thinking of if they have spare cash laying around advertising?
Put it into social and SEO. Think about your customer acquisition and your conversion strategy.
Okay, I think we may have to have a whole other session on conversion strategy. That sounds a bit.
Yeah, you're going to have to bring on somebody who's much more embedded in that market than me. I'm just a salesperson. I sell advertising.
Amazing, cool. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll see you again soon.
Okay.
Hello.
Bye.
Bye-bye.